Alright, let's talk through the logical components of Active Directory. And you are gonna hear these terms over and over again. So I am gonna walk you through them briefly, and then you will hear them as we go through. And it's just good to have familiarity with the names and kind of what they mean behind it. So, up first is what is called the Active Directory schema. And you can think of schema as a rule book or a blueprint. Basically, what it does is it contains definitions of every object that can be created in Active Directory. So you see here, it just say it enforces rules regarding object creation and configuration. That's it. When you hear the schema, all you got to think about is the rule book. You don't have to think too much more complex about that. It just enforces rules about object creation. Most importantly is what are called domains. I don't know what happened with my slide, so bear with me and carry on. So domains are what is used to group things together. So we can group our objects together in a single organization. And you can see here that we have got a single domain, this blackbyte.com, which is all these sources that are provided. These are all resources that are written are provided by Microsoft Virtual Academy. And you know, it's just one domain. And if you have like a small business, think of a small business. You might just have one domain that you are on, and this one domain has all the users, computers, every object inside of it, because all you need is one domain. So we have this one domain and it functions like a domain controller. And we can see down here in the descriptions that there are administrative boundaries for applying policies, and they are authentication, authorization. And this looks very familiar to what a domain controller was, except now we are just managing it all in which is called a domain. So when you see like a .com or .org, you think of that as a domain, not very different when we are building it out in our network. We also have what are called trees. Now trees are a group of domains, and they are kind of in this hierarchy. So you see again, we have this example of this blackbyte.com. Well, what if blackbyte.com is the big namesake and then we have two child domains? So we have got a parent domain and then we have a child domain or two child domains. Okay, and we have a division in North America. So we have got an NA blackbyte.com. Okay, and then we have a European. So we have EMEA.blackbyte.com. So when we have trees, we have this parent and then we have got these children. When it comes to domain, and they have what is called a trust with them. This is a two-way transitive. See, this is a two-way transitive, and we will talk about trust here in just a little bit. But just know that you have the parent and then you have the children, and they share namespace and they share some trust between them. Next on. And then we have what is called a forest. Now forests are just a collection of these trees. Okay, so this is a collection of these trees. So if we have one tree and it's maybe blackbyte, and then you have another tree and maybe it's a different business name, but they link together one way or another, and you can have different sort of trust between these forests. So we will take a look at that again in just a second, but just know that these build up and they stack as they get bigger. and logically. We start with the domain and then we have a tree and then we have a forest. Okay, and for the sake of this class we are only going to be working with the domain. And a lot of times when you see even more advanced Active Directory courses or creators, mostly you are going to be working with trees where you have these children domains and you might try to escalate into a parent domain. Hardly ever do you see forest, but it's still important to know about them. Okay, moving on to our next slide. Now, inside of Active Directory, there are what is called organizational units, and you will hear me refer to them as OUs. OUs. That's the common terminology is an OU for these. OU for these. And these are just containers, and they are containers for your users, your computers, your groups. And you are going to see this once we start building out our Active Directory components. You are gonna see me go in and we are going to set up some different OUs and have our users in one OU. We will have our groups in their own OU, etc. So you will see what they are. But as of right now, just think of OUs as organizational units. Okay, and then we have trust. Now trust are how we have access between resources. Now you can see that there is a directional trust and transitive trust. So if we have directional trust, we have to have trust from one domain to the other. Okay, so it flows from a trusting domain to a trusting domain. Now if we have a transitive trust, then we have a trusting domain and a trusting domain, but it also trusts everything that the domain trusts. So if there's other trees or if it's in a forest, then it trusts everything that trickles down. And you can see in the image here where we have two trusts, but then it's trusting everything that other domains are trusting as well. So a trust is just a way for users to have access to certain resources that might exist in another domain. Okay, that this one is transitive and this one is directional. And lastly, we have objects. So objects are what's going to be inside of our OUs, our organizational units. We are gonna have these different objects. So a user can be an object, a group can be an object, a computer, printer, share folders. You see all these things in the list, in this list. Okay, they can be objects. So let's break this down one more time. So we have domains, and domains are used to group and manage objects in an organization. That's primarily what we are gonna be working with. Okay, if you have multiple domains, we have what's called the tree. You might have a parent domain and then you might have the children domain. And then when you have multiple set of trees, you are starting to build out a forest. Okay, now inside of these domains or these trees, these forests are what's called these OUs, these organizational units. And these organizational units consist of these objects. All right, and then the last thing to remember is across forest or across domains, we have what are called trusts. And these trusts can be directional, meaning that one domain trusts another, or they could be transitive, meaning one domain trusts another domain and then trust everything else that the domain also trusts. Okay, so high level overview, take good note on this if you need to go back and watch it one more time. But you are going to see this over and over, especially domains and organizational units and objects. We will talk about trust again throughout, and we will give some ideas about trees later on as well. So we won't actually be exploiting them. Okay, so big takeaways are domains, organizational units and objects. and remember what trusts as well. Okay, but it does not hurt to know all these things just to boost your Active Directory knowledge, especially for an interview if it comes up. So that is it. Now we are gonna be moving on into our lab building, and this is where the fun really begins. We are done with the PowerPoint, so I will catch you over in the next video and where we start to build out our Active Directory lab.